Hi, I'm Melissa, and this is the Book Break. And today I am super excited to bring in Jerry Borrowman, who is a historical author, both historical fiction and real history. He is someone I have known for years, and I just love him, and I'm so excited. Let's bring him right in.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Jerry. So your new book, Why We Fought. I mean, I've been reading it. It just came out, and I've loved these stories. I'd love you to tell our viewers a little bit more about it.
Well, thank you. So this will be my fourth book where I have a collection of true short stories. Don't know how else to call it. Short stories are usually fiction, but these are actual stories about people who volunteered to serve in World War II. They are non-traditional and non-combatants who put their life at risk to help defeat the Nazis and the Axis powers. And they're just amazing people. The lead story is about Virginia Hall. And I didn't know anything about Virginia until I started doing the extensive research needed to. So what I do is take about 500 pages of research and reduce it down to about 40 pages so that people get the essence of the story. Virginia is the only woman who has one section of the CIA museum fully dedicated to her career. There's four sections, and she's the only person. In World War II, she led a group of 10,000 Maquis fighters. Those are French resistance fighters. And the French were not happy to have a woman leading them. That was not part of their culture. Yeah. But she was so amazingly competent that they fell in line, and she really ran the resistance as the Allies landed on D-Day.
Yeah, and she was an American, so to have not only a woman, but also an American leading the French resistance, I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah, it's just such a wonderful story. I'm just so proud to bring her story to a new audience.
Yeah, and something that I loved about her story was she, in a hunting accident, had an injury in her leg, and she ended up having it amputated. And this was before prosthetics were any good. So she would have days where she's bleeding and on her stump. I mean, tell us more about that.
So she named her stump Cuthbert. So she gave it a name. And in one case, it just broke my heart. She finally got under so much pressure from the Nazis about to find her that she had to escape over the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain. It's in the middle of winter, and she's going on this forced march, and each night she'd take the stump off, and of course it'd be covered in blood because she was putting so much wear on it, and yet she managed to do that. As soon as she got to Spain, she could have gone back to America, been safe, but she immediately went to Britain and started agitating to get into their Office of Strategic Services. She just wanted to be in the fight because she knew Hitler was evil.
Yeah. And she, I remember before she went over to France, in America, she was trying to get involved in service, and they wouldn't let her because she had a prosthetic leg.
Right. There was a lot of discrimination at that point in our history.
Yeah. So tell us about a couple of these other folks in your book.
Okay, so what I do is I go out and I try to find stories that are inspiring but not well known, at least not well known to a modern American audience. Marlene Dietrich was one of the most successful Hollywood actresses who was born in Berlin. She immigrated to America to star in film. She was a great singer. And the Nazis tried to get her to come back and start making movies for them, but she hated Hitler. So she actually joined the USO, went right to the front lines. And what we didn't know until after the war is that she was working behind the scenes to help spy on Germany using the connection she had from her childhood. All of this put her mother at great risk because she still lived in Germany. And yet Marlene was so committed to the cause of freedom that she stood firm against them. I found that to be a great story.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting stories, there's two fun stories in there from my point of view. Juan Pujol was a Spaniard who wanted to resist the Nazis, so he signed up to be a Nazi spy. Simultaneously, he went to the British and asked if he could become a counter spy.
Yeah.
So he moved to England, and he created this imaginary network of spies feeding the Nazis misinformation. They figured that he saved 20 to 30,000 Allied lives on Normandy, the landing in Normandy, because of this fictional network that he had created. The other story that's just awesome is called the Ghost Army. And this is a group of American actors and artists who created a phony army using dummy tanks, inflatable tanks, so that the Nazis would be misdirected to fight against this mythical army, drawing troops away from where a real attack was going to take place. They said that they were equal to 2 divisions, even though there was about 1,000 people total serving. So just wonderful stories.
Yeah, I agree. And I liked it because, I mean, great stories, but it was also really fun to kind of hear, one person's story, and then we hear about another one's, and like we can also put that together in our mind and see like, wow, how these cross. And oftentimes we hear about the soldiers' stories. We don't always hear about the other people that were volunteering, like the spies or like Virginia. And so I love that about this book. Jerry, how did you even learn about these folks or go this? Because you're a historian and you're very, very well versed in all things World War I, World War II, and more. How about these folks that are kind of like the behind the scenes? Tell us a little about that.
Well, so I just went looking for the stories. In the past, stories tended to find me. So I've written 4 co-authored biographies with people who served in World War II and Vietnam. And those were, true stories as well as these. In this case, I went looking through the internet. I went looking through archives. What are the stories that I think are worthy of being told and that would be interesting to people? Karl Lutz was a Swedish ambassador to Budapest who saved 72,000 Jewish lives from the Holocaust. And he was in constant danger every single day. And yet he used his diplomatic immunity to protect people. He would give them essentially Swiss citizenship so that the Nazis couldn't take control of them. And it was a constant battle until the last day of the war. I mean, I just think these are amazing that people they lived in anxiety every single day that they were doing these things. And yet they felt like this is something that they had to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, a lot of us are lucky enough that we've never had to live in that kind of anxiety, wondering if we say something wrong to the other person. And I love that these folks, no matter what their situation was, they were willing to give their all and to risk everything because they knew how many people they had the potential of saving. And I just love that. And for anyone that hasn't read this book yet, first go get it. You should. And also it's great too, because if you don't have, maybe you don't want to take a really long time to read a book, you can read one person's story and then take a break and then go to the next person's story. So I love that. So
well,
Jerry,
we're probably about out of time. What happens is I've been able to distill down to the key parts of the story, sorting it out a lot of detail that I find interesting, but that you really don't need to have to understand what these people did.
Yeah. And you are out there and you write all these books. And so I just wanted you to tell us, we've flashed a couple banners, but where can people go and learn more about you and your books? Because you have a number of other books.
So this was book number 19 that's been commercially published. All are historical fiction except for one science fiction book that was fun to write, but I'm a historical fiction guy. Yeah. They can go to www.jerryborrowman.com. All of my books are there. I love to go speak to groups, so people can book me if they like to do that. And then, of course, I'm on Amazon. I'm on Deseret Book. I'm at Barnes & Noble. So if you type in Jerry Borrowman, you're going to get more information probably than you want. But that's how you would find it. My website is a great resource that I try to keep current.
Yeah, thank you. And then just to give us a little sneak peek, once they read this book and they're engrossed and they're ready for your next new one, do you have anything in the works that we can just keep in the back of our minds?
Well, after they read the other 18 that are already out, just said that for fun. I do have a book coming out from Covenant next year called Dark Seas. It's been 8 years since I wrote a novel, so I decided to move back into it. And Dark Seas is about a U.S. destroyer captain and a fellow in the Merchant Marine whose lives come together through some very unfortunate circumstances as they fight the U-boat menace in the convoys from the United States to England.
Awesome. So we're going to go check you out on social media and your website. Thank you so much for being here with us, Jerry.
It's always a pleasure, Melissa. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you to our viewers. We'll see you next time.